After working with creatives for the last 11 years, I've heard one statement more than any other. I hate marketing. I get it. It can be painful trying to figure out how to market your book or movie or comic. When I started podcasting, I had no clue how to do any of it. I was afraid of doing it wrong, looking like an idiot or making a marketing mistake that I could not recover from. It can be paralyzing. Sound familiar? If it does, let me see if I can help you. I got my MBA in marketing, so you don't have to. Sign up for a free session today to talk about your marketing goals and to see if we're a good fit. If nothing else, you'll get some insights that might ease your mind. Go to southgatesmallbusiness.com and sign up for a free session today. Welcome to Alley Chats. I'm your host, Rob Southgate. Alley Chats is a virtual artist alley featuring interviews with artists, filmmakers, podcasters, writers, really any creative person you might find at a pop culture convention. My goal is to help draw attention to cool people and to hopefully help them get some new fans. I want this podcast to raise up these amazing people and to inspire you, the listener, to chase your dreams as well. You can follow Alley Chats on Facebook and join the conversation. I'll add more social media in the future, but for now, that's the best place to interact with me. You can also email me directly if you would like to be a guest or have a guest suggestion. My email is rob@smgpods.com. Today's guest is Daemon Manx. He's an American author of horror, suspense, psychological thrillers, and speculative fiction. And he's a guest at the Books and Brews event coming up this August 3rd in Evanston, Illinois. There's a link in the show notes if you want to check it out. Anyway, here's Daemon. Daemon, I am so excited to speak to you. I'm sure people that listen to me always hear me say that at the beginning, but I like people and I like writers, and I especially like horror writers. So this is going to be a fun conversation. For me, you might feel differently by the end. We'll find out.
We'll find out.
Okay, so tell people who you are and give a brief background about yourself.
A lot of people do know, but I am Daemon Manx. Of course, Daemon Manx, the pen name that I chose. I'm an author, and I say I'm an author with a backstory because everybody loves a good backstory. So,
oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely into characterization, and I'm a character. I'm a nearly 12 years clean and sober, former heroin addict who spent nearly 8 years in the prison system because heroin addicts make great decisions, some of which I'm infamously known for. Actually, prison's where I learned how to become an author. It's where I turned my life around.
Wow.
It's where I read the book that inspired me to say, this is it. This is what I'm doing. So as far as backstory goes, that's a little bit. That's also where I came up with the name Daemon Manx.
Okay, so you just laid about 100 things for me to ask in there. One is, what was the book that inspired you?
Well, let me first go back. The original inspiration going back to childhood was Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Yeah, it scared the hell out of every kid, right?
Well,
we're in the same age group.
Yeah.
And I know that movie, when that came out, it was like, this is a Disney movie. Those trailers with the hands, like, this is dark. I loved it. Loved it.
I loved it too. And what I love about Bradbury's writing is, I read all of his redrafts and they're available to find it. And he went to such painstaking efforts to make every sentence perfect.
Yeah.
And that each perfect sentence leads to a perfect paragraph, to a perfect page. It's so masterfully crafted. But what I love is how he encapsulated the mysterious emotion and feel of the coming of Halloween and autumn through a young boy's eyes. That was my original inspiration. The book that I read while I was in prison that said, hey, you got to write a short story collection one day, was 20th Century Ghosts by Joe Hill.
Oh, really?
That's the one that did it.
Wow, what a great book. And you know
What a
what?
great book.
I I have a funny story attached to that.
Really?
Yeah, I was reading and I don't know why this inspired me. Uh if you read Full Throttle at the beginning, he talks about his childhood and everything. And I had met him at a con. So I'd followed him and everything, and I'm reading this. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then I started reading 21st Century Ghosts, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I was writing the foreword to a book, and it was not the foreword. It was the foreword in Full Throttle that gave me like, oh, this is how I can get into this without it feeling like crap. But then I was reading that book, and it did the same thing to me. The way he wrote, his prose was like it was very different than his father. It was something new that I just went like,
Yes.
wow. And I wrote him on Instagram and just said, okay, I told you inspired me on this part of it, but now I'm looking at your prose here. And he was so nice. He wrote back, he's like, oh man, that made my day. And like, just what a wonderful dude. So it's so funny you said that book. I've never had somebody say that book to me.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that short story, Pop Art, is like
Yes.
nothing I've ever read before. And oh my God, that it just a story that resonates in your head 11 years after you read it is
Right.
that's the work of a master. And yeah, Joe Hill changed my life. Joe Hill is also part of the reason why my pen name last name is Manx.
Okay, let's hear it.
Part of the reason. Okay, so Charlie Manx is the antagonist in the book Nosferatu.
Hmm.
Um, but Manx is like the Isle of Manx, which is also called the Isle of Man. So it represents the word man. Daemon is an entity that has the ability to transform the personality of a man. So if you take Daemon Manx, you have transformed personality of man, which going into the prison system, learning how to become a writer or attempting to become a writer, finding my recovery, finding multiple things that would give me a second chance at life was the transformation in my life, making me become Daemon Manx.
You told me it was a good story. It's a great story, Damon. That is really,
Well, thank you
really
so much.
amazing. Really amazing. And yeah, I was thinking when you were talking about the transformation, even just from getting away from heroin, uh, that transformation, because I know people that have had to deal with this and coming out of the other end, they don't know if they're going to be the same person and they're terrified of it. And it's like that takes a lot of bravery, a lot of courage. And some people don't come out great.
And I will tell you, you are not the same person
Right.
on the others. I'm not. There was me who before I got involved using drugs and
Sure.
before I felt like I needed to use drugs to get through the day.
Right.
But there's always a lot of reasons why somebody does use, and for me, I had never dealt with my anxiety, never dealt with my insecurities, and I was living kind of a selfish, immature life. And drugs were a symptom of my malady. And when there were many days in prison. I'm like, I'm not making it through this. I am not coming out of this.
Yeah.
And one day leads to the next, and each day builds a little more muscle in your resolve to be a stronger person.
Yeah.
Coming out of prison, I'm a much different person. I'd like to think I'm a much better person. And I know that I've been given a second chance, and that I just so love to share that because anybody out there who might be struggling with a similar situation can see, it can be done, you know.
So before these magic moments of reading Bradbury and reading Joe Hill in prison, did you have aspirations to be a writer, or did that just kind of ignite something?
Uh, I was really young when the movie Jaws came out, and I was so inspired by it. I think I was in third or fourth grade and dating myself, but I came right home and I wrote a sequel screenplay
Ah, fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. It was, I cast like myself and all my family members as the characters of the
Right.
the, the screenplay, and it was probably on the same level as some of the Jaws reboots afterwards, or sequels. So I was like, I always had this desire to write, and my mother was a writer for the newspaper, a great storyteller. I was always inspired by great stories. And then, throughout my high school and shortly after high school, I got into band. So I started writing lyrics. I was very much into that. I've always been highly focused on music and really inspired by music. That's a huge part of my life. And it was in my very early days when I first got locked up. I was telling a story. I was telling the story to my bunkie about how I got on the game show Wheel of Fortune.
Okay.
And and he goes, I feel like you could write a book. And I was like, I feel like I could write a book. And then and that was it. So I started writing books.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So you write in the horror genre. Obviously, that's why we're talking. Uh, what has writing horror taught you about yourself?
Yeah. So a lot of what I do write is drawn from inspiration of real life events. Things that have happened to me throughout my childhood, throughout my adulthood, in prison that I take and often fictionalize. And, taking that introspective look at where I've been, what I've gone through allows me to tap into the emotion that I'm feeling. And I've had stories where I'm getting to that impactful ending that have brought tears to my eyes as I'm writing it, and I get that chill. And it's allowed me to have a clearer look into myself, which is a big part of the healing process. Really identifying with your own emotions and what is the root cause of some of these emotions is really an intrinsic part of my writing process. And then when somebody tells me that they were impacted the same way that I was feeling when I wrote it, is just that's the payoff.
Yeah. Want more shows like this? We've got a lot more on the Southgate Media Group Patreon page. Some free, some paid. Plus, there's exclusive content for subscribers only. Follow the link in the show notes or look up Southgate Media Group on Patreon and check out the cool stuff we're doing over there. You won't be sorry. On August 3rd, 2024, Books of Horror is presenting Books and Brews at Double Clutch Brewing Company in Evanston, Illinois. There will be over 40 horror authors for a book signing and meetup from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. that day. Meet your favorite authors, discover new authors, meet Books of Horror friends in real life, including the author I'm talking with on this podcast. Oh, and I'll be there too. This is an all ages event. Food, alcohol, and non alcoholic beverages will be available. No outside food or drinks will be allowed. Search for Books of Horror Presents Books and Brews on Facebook events for more information, or click on the link in the show notes. I hope to see you there. I fell into a rabbit hole listening to that. I really enjoyed what you were saying there
Oh,
about that. So horror is a genre. Because that was very personal. Horror is a genre. Uh, what do you think is the importance in general of horror as a genre out in the world?
you know, well, of course we've got the tagline horror author and horror books of horror,
Right.
which is a fantastic group to be involved in. But I don't really I just consider myself a writer. I'm a writer of life experiences, and sometimes they're fictionalized, and life can be horrific at times. And I think exposing that is the duty of a horror author. The duty of a good horror author is to peel back the layer of what's really going on and look at that black beating heart that lies
Yeah.
within. That I feel. So, I write humor. I throw humor into my books. I write nonfiction. I put stories, I've got some nonfiction stuff. So I consider myself a writer, but I think horror out there in the world is to combine all the aspects of life, put them together, present them to the reader, and allow them to ascertain what it means to them.
Excellent answer.
Thank you.
Well, that was a very formal exchange between us. So I agree. I'm not one who loves the labels on things. We've become over labeled. Look at music. I mean, good Lord. When I say I'm a punk fan, it's like, okay, but what punk and what era? And like, you've got to have all these qualifiers. It's like, okay,
Exactly.
it's easier to say what I don't like. Uh, as a writer, though, so now we're talking, you're a writer. There's a sandbox that you are kind of known in with horror, but you do write all these other things. Do you think that horror writers, I already know your answer. I'm asking a dumb question. Warning. Spoiler alert. I just went to the back page of this, but do you think horror writers can learn from reading fantasy, from reading science fiction, from reading nonfiction? Or do you think that, like, hey, if you're going to write horror, try to stick to horror and true crime and you'll get inspired that way?
Yeah, no. I think you have to spread it out across genres. Definitely so. Um, one of the most inspiring books I've ever read was Remains of the Day, or Moby Dick. Cross genres,
Yeah.
the classics, of course, the dystopian or the characterized version that Orwell laid down in Animal Farm in 1984. Not typically horror in any sense, but so much to be learned, and so much to be learned from the classics and across genres. Just so much to be learned.
I told you it was a dumb question because I knew you were going to feel that way.
Yeah, well,
But I wrote the question down and I thought I'm going to be a good podcaster and actually use a question I wrote.
I should have just said, nah, you should just read horror.
No,
That's it.
I only have Stephen King on my shelf. That's the only thing you should read.
Yep, and
And
I only have Misery, and that's the only book I read over and over and over.
you're like with Catcher in the Rye, but it's Misery. You go to
Yeah.
bookstores, you look for Misery. You have multiple copies. One's in your coat
Yeah.
right now.
Oh, I don't have that cover of Misery. I should really see what this one's all about.
So, so right now, this is a hard question. Who are the top 3 horror writers in your opinion right now?
Oh, top 3 horror writers, right? I can never do that. But what are we spreading it out over?
Right now.
Traditionally published, non-traditionally published, indie authors.
You're putting so many labels on this. Didn't I just tell you I don't like labels?
Yeah. I don't like labels either. But you know what? Right now, I there's a reason why Stephen King has sold as many books as he is. Stephen King will always be in my top 3. Joe Hill will always be in my top 3. Joe Hill, actually, number 1.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. Okay. Joe Hill, definitely. And I got to meet Joe Hill someday because I got to tell him this story that, how he changed my life without even knowing it.
He'll love it.
And I'll say, and I hope you're proud of him. So,
He's a very human, very cool person. So he will love that story.
Yeah. And I read so many. You know what? Right now, Ronald Malfi.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Is that who you're reading right now?
Yeah, I'm reading. Well, I'm about to start something new. So I'm deciding. So.
All right. All right. Now here's we're about up on time. So the reason we're talking is you're at Books and Brews August 3rd. It's a double clutch brewing company in Evanston. There's going to be like 50 horror writers there. Anybody listening, I encourage you, and I'll have this in the show notes where they can link to it. But if you can get out to this event, they have a VIP thing, they have meet and greet type things, and then they have an event in the afternoon that you can go and just buy books and meet authors, and it's just this wonderful event. That's why we're on here. That's how I brought you to this. This means you're going to be in Chicagoland. I don't know if you know Chicagoland, but I'm going to ask you this question, whether you do or not. What are you most wanting to see or do while you're in Chicago?
Oh. I'm a food guy. I've got to try Chicago pizza. So that's the main thing on my list. But I'm going to tool around. I'm going to see if I can't check out a little blues while I'm there too. So I'm going a couple days early, and I'm going to tool around Chicago.
Fantastic. Well, we're friends now, so you reach out to me,
Hmm.
and I can give you all sorts of advice on where to go, what to do, and what is the correct pizza to get, and
Fantastic.
what is the correct hot dog to get. Because we all have opinions here, just like everybody has. Well, you know that phrase. So my opinion is the one I think matters. So when
I'm
you're ready,
sure that,
Damon, you
yeah.
tell me, and I will
Hi, I'm
direct
looking
you.
forward to it.
I
Yeah,
will
that'd
direct
be
you.
great.
So what else do you have coming up?
I have a 4-book series that's coming out this summer. 4 books in 4 months. July,
Nice.
August, September, October. All 4 books are coming out. It's called the Ojanox series. Book 1 is called Scream in the Dark. Takes place in 1979 in a small isolated mountain town called Garrett Grove. The week before Halloween, and the children of Garrett Grove are getting sick, and now people are dying, and there's been a murder, and all whatnot breaks loose in the course of a week. This book I wrote as a love letter to the golden age of horror, the 70s and 80s of horror novels. I not only wanted a book that encapsulated Halloween and the coming of age story of young Troy Fisher, the way he sees Halloween at that time, but I wanted it to be also written in the style. So it's very many multiple characters, shifting points of view from the sheriff to the morgue to the doctor to Troy Fisher to his mom, multiple characters. First draft was over 520,000 pages.
Woo!
It got knocked down. 4-book series, the Ojanox series, Scream in the Dark. I'm gonna have early copies before they're available for the public out at Books and Brews.
I was
So
just going to ask you that
yeah,
because I was reading about it on your website, and the funniest thing is what you said at the beginning of this show. I looked at it, I read the description, and I was like, it triggered the something wicked this way comes in me. It was exactly what I thought of, and I went, oh, I'm into this. I'm into this. This is going to be cool. And then that's what you said was the inspiration behind you writing. Damon, I am, I am all in. This sounds amazing. I also love the idea of the rapid release, one every month, because you know what happens. You get to the end of the book and you're like, oh no, how long do I have to wait? Maybe
yeah.
a couple
And
days.
there's a 3-week time period in between the actual release of each book, and of course, you do get to the end of book 1, and there's cliffhangers here.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking
There
for.
are some serious book 1, 2, and 3. You're going to be like, but everybody who's had an early copy of like, I can't wait to find out. And it's creepy. It's creature feature. It's old
Oh,
school horror. It's
I love
coming of
all of
age.
this.
It's there. That's my favorite stuff. And
Yeah.
I always wanted. I'm like, you know what? Wouldn't it be great if The Stand was just like the first third of the book was the whole damn book, the whole way through, fast page turner.
Yeah.
So I set out to try to emulate that, and I guess the reader will let me know if I succeeded or not over
Well,
the
judging from the stuff
months.
I've read, I think you have. I cannot wait to read this. Books and Brews, Double Clutch Brewing Company, August 3rd in Evanston, Illinois. Bring Damon a slice of pizza. He'll love you forever. Actually, you're a coffee guy, so we got to talk
Yeah,
coffee. I'm a coffee guy too.
yeah,
So we'll definitely share a coffee there.
well,
Damon,
absolutely.
thank you so much for being on. And I will put your social media, I'll put your links, I'll put all of it in the show notes. And yeah, man, August 3rd, come
This was
meet
awesome.
Damon
Yeah,
and buy
August
books
3rd,
from
meet
him.
there. Yeah,
Buy
if
books.
there are going to be so many authors, so buy books from somebody, but I'll be there. We can chat and we'll get a picture or something,
Sounds great.
That's all.
All right, Damon, thank you for your time, and we'll see you in August.
Thank you very much. I'll see you then. All right.
Bye-bye.
Peace.
It would really help me out if you would rate and review this show on whatever platform you use to listen to this podcast. Good reviews help others find the show, which ultimately helps the people I've interviewed get more exposure. You can connect with me on social media or via email. All the links are found in the show notes. If you like this show, you'll like other shows from Southgate Media Group as well, such as Read Between the Lines, a podcast featuring insightful interviews with some of the hottest authors out there, or Go Fund This, a podcast where we interview people about their amazing crowdfunding projects. You can find our shows wherever you listen to podcasts, so give them a try. And if you like what you hear, don't forget to rate and review our shows. It really helps other people find them and keep our team inspired. Alley Chats is a production of Southgate Media Group, hosted, produced, and edited by me, Rob Southgate. Thanks again for listening to Alley Chats.